Hello, welcome to my channel. Before we start, it's a good idea to get into bed and relax. I would also like to ask you to subscribe to my channel, like it, and write in the comments where you are from and what time it is. Thank you. Have a nice viewing. Imagine waking up not as yourself, but as a king, a ruler whose every breath shapes the fate of thousands. This story will take you deep into a single day of life inside a grand medieval castle. From the moment the dawn breaks through the stained glass windows of the royal chamber, to the quiet solitude of the night when the king removes his crown and faces his own thoughts. You'll walk through torchlit halls, hear the echo of boots in the throne room, smell the roasted meat in the great hall, and feel the weight of decisions no man should make alone. You'll see how power, glory, and loneliness coexist behind stone walls. This isn't a story of war or conquest, but of one man's burden, routine, and humanity. It's about the quiet details, the clinking of armor, the warmth of bread at breakfast, the ink on royal documents, the whispers of courtiers, and the silence that follows when the hall empties. By the end of this story, you'll have lived a full day as a medieval king, from sunrise to moonlight, and perhaps you'll understand that beneath the crown, every king is still just a man. The castle still slept beneath a thin veil of mist. Beyond the ramparts, the first golden threads of dawn stretched across the valley, lighting the distant forest. Inside, silence reigned, the kind of silence that only ancient stone could hold. Deep within those walls, behind heavy curtains of velvet, a king began to stir. The faint crackle of a dying hearth filled the chamber. The king opened his eyes slowly, greeted by the cool breath of morning air slipping through the window. His bed, vast and draped in embroidered linen, felt colder than usual. For a moment, he lay still, not as a ruler, but as a man awakening to another endless day of duty. Servants entered quietly, their steps muffled by thick rugs. They bowed low, eyes to the floor, carrying fresh water in polished brass basins. The king said nothing as they laid out his garments, the deep crimson robe, the fur-lined mantle, the golden chain heavy with years of rule. Every piece a reminder of who he must be, even before sunrise. Steam rose gently from the basin as he washed his face. The water smelled faintly of lavender and iron. Through the open window came the distant caw of a crow and the soft murmur of stables coming to life. The king's reflection shimmered on the water's surface, tired eyes framed by the weight of a crown yet unseen. When he stepped into the antechamber, the castle was awakening with him. Pages hurried down corridors, torches flickered out one by one, replaced by beams of morning light. Somewhere in the kitchens, bread began to bake, a scent that wove through cold stone and whispered of warmth, of life continuing beyond his throne. The king's breakfast awaited, a simple meal by royal standards, bread still steaming from the oven, honey, and a cup of watered wine. He ate slowly, listening to the quiet hum of the castle waking. Each sound was familiar, comforting, predictable. Yet within that calm, there lingered the quiet loneliness of command. As he finished, his steward entered, a thin man with parchment skin and cautious eyes. He bowed deeply before unfolding the day's scroll. Decrees to be sealed, disputes to be judged, taxes to be settled, guests to receive. The same rhythm, repeated like the tolling of a distant bell. The king nodded in silence. Before the hall filled with voices, he stepped onto the balcony. The morning air was crisp, tasting of dew and wood smoke. Below, the courtyard stirred with life, guards training, horses stamping, banners fluttering in the wind. For a fleeting moment, he let the sunlight rest on his face and closed his eyes. In that quiet space between dawn and duty, he remembered his youth, days of freedom before the crown, before every choice carried the weight of a kingdom. The memory was distant, yet sweet, like a melody he once knew by heart. Then, a knock at the door. Soft, polite, inevitable. The day had begun. The great hall awaited him, long, echoing, and bathed in pale morning light. Sunbeams streamed through high windows, dust floating like tiny spirits in the air. The banners of his ancestors hung solemnly on the walls, their colors faded but proud. Every thread whispered of wars won and oaths kept, of legacies now resting on his shoulders. As the king entered, courtiers and advisors bowed in a silent wave of reverence. Their movements were precise, rehearsed, almost ceremonial. The sound of his boots on the stone floor echoed like a heartbeat in the vast chamber. When he took his seat upon the throne, the murmurs died, replaced by the stillness of waiting eyes. The chancellor stepped forward first, parchment in hand. His voice trembled faintly as he spoke of trade routes and border tolls, of merchants petitioning for lower taxes. Numbers and names filled the air like distant rain. The king listened, his face calm, but inside his thoughts drifted between duty and weariness. Next came the captain of the guard, a broad man with iron gray hair. He spoke of patrols, of roads washed out by storms, of thieves caught and punished. The king nodded, his eyes steady. Yet behind his calm gaze, he wondered if peace was ever truly real, or just a pause between storms the realm could not see. A young noble approached, bowing deeply, voice trembling with ambition. He sought favor, a grant of land, a title, a chance to rise. The king studied him quietly. He saw not a petitioner, but a reflection of what he once had been, eager, uncertain, still unburdened by years of rule. He granted the request, gently, almost kindly. The council continued, voices blended into a steady hum, like bees in a summer field. The king's hand moved slowly across the parchments, signing decrees with the heavy seal of the crown. Each stroke of ink carried weight. A life changed, a destiny altered. All decided in calm silence under vaulted stone. Occasionally, his eyes wandered to the window, to the blue stretch of sky beyond the hall. For a fleeting second, he imagined walking through the meadows outside the castle walls, feeling grass beneath his boots instead of polished marble. But such dreams were for simpler men, and the world would not wait for them. The bishop spoke next, a man cloaked in gold and incense. He spoke of faith, of tithes, of divine favor upon the realm. His words were smooth, practiced, yet the king heard something hollow beneath them. He had learned long ago that even holiness could wear the mask of politics. Still, he nodded, as kings must. At last, the council drew to a close. The courtiers bowed once more, retreating like a tide withdrawing from shore. The great hall emptied, leaving only the echo of footsteps and the soft rustle of silk. The king remained seated, hands resting on the arms of the throne, feeling the silence settle like dust. He breathed deeply, closing his eyes. The air smelled of parchment and wax, of duty and time. Outside, bells began to ring from the chapel tower, marking the hour. Another morning had passed, measured not in joy or sorrow, but in decisions made and burdens carried. The day stretched before him, long and heavy as the crown itself. The heavy doors opened with a groan of old wood, and sunlight spilled into the corridor. The king stepped outside, leaving behind the dim chill of the throne hall. The air greeted him with warmth, soft and clean, carrying the scent of hay, horse, and morning bread. Somewhere nearby, laughter rang like bells. The courtyard was alive. Pages ran between the stables, carrying saddles and water pails. Horses neighed, their coats gleaming in the light. Guards stood in formation, training beneath the banners that flapped lazily in the mild breeze. The clang of steel on steel echoed across the stone walls, sharp but rhythmic, almost musical. The king walked slowly through the courtyard, his steps deliberate. People bowed as he passed, but he did not command their silence. He preferred the sound of work, the hum of the living castle. It reminded him that the realm was not only parchment and seals, but hands, sweat, and voices that built its strength. He paused by the fountain at the center of the yard. Its water shimmered like liquid glass beneath the sun. He dipped his fingers into it, feeling its cool touch, then watched the ripples fade. For a moment, he simply stood there, a man at peace, surrounded by the simple rhythm of daily life. A stable boy, no older than 12, approached hesitantly, holding a small mare's reins. His bow was clumsy, but his eyes bright with pride. The king smiled faintly and asked her name. Larkspur, the boy whispered, cheeks flushed. The king nodded, a simple exchange, but one that carried warmth deeper than titles ever could. Nearby, two hounds wrestled in the dust, tails wagging. A falconer crossed the yard, the great bird perched upon his arm, feathers catching the light. The king watched as the falcon's sharp eyes met his own, both creatures born to rule, both bound by invisible chains. He turned away before the thought could linger. The midday sun climbed higher, and the bells rang from the chapel once again. The kitchens released new scents: roasted meat, herbs, and sweet ale. Courtiers began to gather in the shadows, waiting for his next command. But for now, the king let the moment stretch. Peace, even brief, was worth more than gold. He found a bench by the wall and sat for a while, feeling the warmth of stone beneath his hands. He listened, not as a ruler, but as a witness to life unfolding around him. The murmur of voices, the distant call of crows, the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze, all spoke of a kingdom breathing. An advisor appeared, bowing deeply, and whispered of schedules and messages awaiting his seal. The king rose slowly, brushing dust from his robe. Duty was calling once again, steady and patient as the tide. With one last look at the sunlit courtyard, he turned back toward the castle gates. The shadow of the archway fell across his path as he stepped inside. Behind him, laughter and life carried on, free and bright. Ahead, the corridors grew cool and quiet once more. The king exhaled softly, his footsteps fading into the stillness of stone. Another hour of light had passed, another weight returned. The great hall had transformed. Long tables gleamed beneath the soft glow of chandeliers, silver dishes polished to mirrors. The scent of roasted pheasant, spiced wine, and freshly baked bread filled the air. Musicians tuned their lutes in the corner, soft notes fluttering like wings against the high stone ceiling. As the king entered, every head bowed. Servants froze mid-step, courtiers lowered their eyes. He walked to the high table beneath the royal crest, its oak polished by generations of hands. When he sat, the rustle of silk and armor filled the hall, the sound of the realm itself coming to rest before him. A herald struck his staff upon the floor, announcing the meal's beginning. Platters appeared like magic: roasted quail, honeyed apples, loaves still steaming. Goblets caught the light as red wine flowed. The air shimmered with warmth and motion, yet beneath it all, and in spoken order, no one truly spoke until the king did. He lifted his cup, and conversation slowly bloomed. Voices rose like timid birds returning to song. Laughter rippled down the tables, cautious but sincere. The king listened, offering nods and faint smiles. Around him, life unfolded: noblemen debating horses, ladies whispering of gowns, knights boasting of hunts and skirmishes. The first taste of the meal was rich and sweet, yet the king barely noticed its flavor. He ate slowly, with quiet grace, more out of habit than hunger. Between bites, his gaze drifted across the hall, over faces painted with devotion, ambition, and fear. To them, he was not a man, but a living emblem of order. At the far end of the table, a minstrel began to play, a soft, lilting tune that carried across the room like a dream half remembered. The melody stirred something within the king. It spoke of open fields, rain on the sea, of home before the crown. His eyes softened for a moment before duty reclaimed them. A jest was made nearby, and laughter followed. He smiled politely, though his heart stayed quiet. The hall shimmered with gold and sound, yet he felt the familiar stillness beneath it all, the gentle ache of isolation that comes not from absence, but from height. To be above others was to be apart from them. The meal lingered. Plates emptied, candles melted low, and the hum of voices began to fade. The king rose at last, his chair sliding back with a low sigh of wood. At once, silence rippled through the hall. All stood, all bowed. The ritual complete, the performance of power once more at rest. He offered a brief nod, then turned toward the side corridor. Behind him, servants began clearing silver and crumbs, sweeping away the evidence of splendor. Ahead, the hallways stretched cool and dim, the scent of smoke and spice trailing faintly behind his robes as he walked deeper into the heart of the castle. Beyond the noise and ceremony, a smaller chamber awaited him, a place of quiet refuge. A single candle burned there, its light trembling in the still air. The king sat beside it, exhaling softly. The feast was over. The crowd had gone, yet the day, and its quiet burdens, were far from their end. The sun had moved past its peak, spilling a softer, amber light through the tall arched windows. Dust floated lazily in the glow, drifting like tiny stars caught in the slow rhythm of time. The castle had grown quieter, the footsteps distant, the corridors dim, the hum of life muffled beneath layers of stone. The king sat in his private study, a chamber lined with shelves of leather-bound scrolls and fading tomes. The scent of ink and wax filled the air. A single quill rested beside an open letter. Its words half read, its message half felt. Outside, a breeze whispered against the glass, soft and hollow as a sigh. He leaned back in his chair, eyes tracing the words before him. Letters from distant lords, from loyal knights, from villages unseen. Each one a small echo of lives beyond the castle walls, fields sown, disputes settled, prayers whispered. To them, he was the voice of law. To himself, he was a man searching for quiet meaning. A servant entered silently, placing fresh parchment beside the desk. The king nodded without a word. The servant bowed low and disappeared as soundlessly as he had come. For a moment, the only noise was the faint crackle of the fireplace, gentle, steady, alive in its own secret rhythm. He dipped the quill into ink, then paused. His hand hovered over the page, but no words came. It was not the weight of thought that stopped him, but the ache of repetition, the endless cycle of decisions and decrees. He sighed softly, setting the quill aside, and turned his gaze toward the window. Beyond the glass, the courtyard shimmered beneath the late afternoon sun. He could see the banners swaying lazily, the soldiers changing posts, the pigeons circling the tower. From up here, everything seemed peaceful, balanced, yet he knew that beneath every still surface, there were ripples unseen. He rose slowly and crossed the room, trailing his hand along the edge of the desk. The wood was smooth, worn from years of use. Every groove, every mark carried memory. He stopped beside the old map upon the wall, the outline of his kingdom drawn in careful strokes. His fingers followed its borders, tracing both pride and loneliness. A faint knock sounded at the door, a messenger with parchment sealed in green wax. The king broke it open, scanning the words quickly. News from the coast. A storm had torn through the fishing villages. Losses, yet survivable. He exhaled, quietly relieved, though his heart felt the distance of every wound he could not mend. As the light began to fade, he returned to his chair. The candle beside him flickered weakly, fighting the slow encroachment of dusk. He rested his head upon his hand, eyes heavy, thoughts wandering like the smoke above the flame. Memory and duty blurred into the same stillness, a quiet he both craved and feared. Somewhere deep within the castle, a bell tolled softly, marking the hour. The day moved forward, patient and unyielding. The king closed his eyes for a moment, allowing the silence to hold him. Outside, the world breathed, unaware of the man who ruled it. A man sitting alone, in the fading light of his own reflection. The evening light softened, turning the stone walls golden. Candles flickered awake one by one, their glow trembling across the chamber. The king sat still by the window, lost in quiet thought, when the door creaked softly open. A gentle voice spoke his name, low, careful, familiar. The queen entered with a grace that did not need announcement. Her gown shimmered faintly, threads of silver catching the light. She moved as if time itself slowed for her, calm and deliberate. In her hands, she carried a small book, its cover worn, its purpose simple. She smiled faintly as she drew closer. "My lord," she said, her tone neither formal nor distant. The king rose from his chair, a trace of warmth in his tired eyes. He gestured for her to sit beside him. She did, resting the book upon her lap. For a while, neither spoke. The silence between them was soft, not cold, but full of meaning unspoken. The faint scent of rosewater followed her, blending with the smoke of the candles. She glanced at the papers on his desk, endless letters, maps, and seals. Still working, she murmured, half a question, half a sigh. He smiled faintly. "Always," he said, voice quiet as the turning of a page. They sat together in the dim light, listening to the slow rhythm of the fire. The queen opened her book, poetry, old and fragile. She read a few lines aloud, her voice smooth and warm. The words spoke of spring, of rivers, of hearts that once dared to dream. The king listened, and for a moment, he was not a ruler, but a man remembering youth. When she finished, the silence returned, deeper now, but peaceful. The king turned toward her, eyes tracing the lines of time upon her face. "You have not changed," he whispered. She smiled gently. "Nor have you." though the crown has tried. Their laughter was soft, like wind brushing across velvet. They spoke then, not of politics or duty, but of small things. Of gardens and music, of the people who lived beyond their walls. The queen spoke of a child she'd seen in the courtyard, chasing a dog through the mud. He laughed so freely, she said, as if the world were his. The king nodded, lost in thought. I envy that freedom, he murmured. The queen reached out, placing her hand over his. Even kings may find peace, if they allow themselves to. Her touch was light, but grounding, a reminder that beneath the robes and rituals, there still beat a heart, quiet but unbroken. Outside, the first stars began to appear, faint against the deepening sky. The queen rose, closing her book. Rest soon, she said softly. He nodded, watching her leave. The door closed behind her, and her fragrance lingered in the still air, a trace of warmth in the vastness of stone. For a long while, he sat alone once more. The fire whispered and sighed, and the candlelight swayed gently across the walls. The king leaned back in his chair, eyes half closed, and allowed himself to breathe, slow, deep, unguarded. Beyond the window, night had come, quiet and patient as time itself. Night had fallen gently upon the castle. The corridors glowed with the dim light of torches, their flames swaying with the breath of passing air. The king walked in silence, his steps soft against the stone. He wore no crown now, no robe of ceremony, only a simple cloak, dark as the sky outside. In the courtyard, the world was still. The moon hung low above the towers, bathing the walls in silver. The guards saluted as he passed, their armor glinting faintly. None dared to ask where he was going. The stable doors opened without a word, and the scent of hay and leather filled the cool air. A young groom brought forth his horse, a tall black steed named Ashen. The king ran a hand down its neck, feeling the warmth of living muscle beneath his palm. No saddle, he whispered, and the boy hesitated, then nodded. Moments later, the king swung himself onto the horse's back, the leather reins cool in his grip. They rode through the lower gate, past the sleeping guards, and out into the open fields. The wind greeted them like an old friend, brisk and clean, carrying the scent of pine and river mist. The sound of hooves against the earth echoed in the night, steady and strong, the rhythm of freedom remembered. The land spread wide beneath the stars. Meadows glimmered faintly, silvered by moonlight. The king rode without direction, guided only by instinct, away from walls, away from duty. For the first time that day, he breathed deeply, freely. The cold air filled his chest like truth long forgotten. He slowed the horse near a small rise, where the castle could still be seen in the distance, its towers glowing faintly against the dark. He dismounted, standing in the tall grass, cloak brushing the dew. The night was vast and tender, the kind that made kings and shepherds equal beneath its gaze. The stars shimmered endlessly, ancient and indifferent. He watched them in silence, remembering the boy he once was, barefoot in the fields, chasing dreams instead of power. For a moment, he wished he could speak to that boy, tell him that crowns shine brighter than they feel, and that silence can weigh more than gold. The horse grazed quietly beside him, breath clouding in the cool air. The king closed his eyes, listening to the wind, the rustle of grass, the far cry of an owl. No court, no titles, no echoes of command, only life itself, steady and infinite. A strange peace filled him, soft as sleep. After a while, he mounted again, turning the horse toward the castle. Its silhouette waited on the horizon, ancient and patient, as if watching over him. The ride back was slow. The night wrapped around them like a cloak, carrying him gently toward his duties once more. When he entered the courtyard, the torches flickered quietly. The guards pretended not to notice his absence. The king dismounted, stroked the horse's mane, and whispered thanks. As he walked inside, the walls seemed less cold, the silence less heavy. The night had taken something, and given something back. The king returned to his chamber in silence. The castle had fallen into its deepest rest, where every sound seemed softer, slower. Only the quiet murmur of the wind slipped through the cracks of the old windows. The candles burned low, their light trembling like tired hearts. He set aside his cloak and crown, placing them gently upon the stand. For a while, he simply stood there, letting the silence settle around him. Then, His eyes drifted toward a small chest near the corner of the room. Old, unadorned, and long untouched. Dust shimmered faintly upon its surface. He knelt beside it, fingers brushing the cool iron clasp. The lock opened with a soft click, and the scent of cedar and age rose from within. Inside lay fragments of a life once lived, a wooden flute, a faded ribbon, a ring too small for his hands now, and a letter bound with blue thread. He lifted the flute first, tracing the grooves worn smooth by years. He remembered learning to play beneath the oak near his childhood home, when songs were for joy, not ceremony. He placed it to his lips and breathed softly. The note was weak, trembling, but alive. It filled the room with the sound of a boy long gone. The ribbon came next, pale, almost colorless, yet still holding a whisper of lavender. It had belonged to someone he had once loved, in days before crowns and courts. He closed his eyes and saw her face again, not clear, but radiant with laughter. The memory lingered like a ghost made of light. He opened the letter last. The parchment was fragile, the ink faded to brown. It was written in his own hand, years ago, a promise to himself. "I will be a good king," the words read, "and never forget the man I was before." He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that holds both pride and sorrow. He sat for a long while, surrounded by the remnants of his own past. The candle beside him had nearly burned down, its wax pooling like melted time. He felt no regret, only a deep, aching tenderness, the quiet understanding that even kings are built from moments like these, small and human. Outside, the wind sighed against the stone walls, carrying the scent of rain. The king rose, closing the chest with care, as though sealing a dream. He returned to his chair and let his hand rest upon the wood, feeling its warmth one last time before the light dimmed. The last candle flickered weakly, its flame curling into smoke. The room darkened until only the faint silver of moonlight remained. The king leaned back, eyes heavy, and allowed himself to drift into thought, of youth, of promise, of the quiet beauty of memory. And when his eyes finally closed, the world around him seemed to exhale. The chest, the flute, the letter, all faded into the hush of night, waiting patiently for morning to find them again. Sleep came gently, like the slow descent of snow. The king drifted through darkness that felt neither cold nor empty. It carried him softly, until the weight of years loosened its hold, and he found himself standing beneath the old oak from his youth. The air was warm, touched by sunlight and birdsong. He looked down and saw his hands, not calloused by the quill or heavy with rings, but young, free, unburdened. The crown was gone, his head was light again. He breathed deeply, tasting the sweetness of summer on his tongue. A field stretched before him, green and endless. He could see the small village beyond the hills, the smoke curling gently from hearths. The laughter of children drifted through the air, distant yet clear, like bells echoing through time. He began to walk toward it, barefoot upon the cool grass. Each step brought back something forgotten. The feel of soil between his toes, the scent of wildflowers, the distant bark of a dog. All the small, honest pieces of life that power had stolen. He felt himself smiling, not as a king, but simply as a man who belonged somewhere. A stream shimmered beside the path. He knelt and cupped his hands, letting the cold water run over his skin. When he lifted his gaze, he saw a face reflected there, not his own, but the boy he once was, eyes bright and unafraid. The boy smiled at him, and for a moment, time stood still. The dream deepened. He was in his childhood home now. Wooden walls, the scent of bread baking, the faint hum of his mother's song. The sound wrapped around him like a blanket, soft and familiar. He wanted to stay there, in that golden light, forever. But dreams have tides, and this one began to pull him gently away. The voices grew faint, the light dimmed. He reached out, trying to hold on to that world, but his fingers met only air. The boy beneath the oak waved once more, before fading into the mist of morning. He felt himself falling through layers of memory, the laughter, the fields, the promise of simplicity, all drifting upward, like petals caught in wind. Beneath it all, a quiet voice whispered, "Remember who you were, even when the world forgets." The king stirred in his bed, caught between dream and waking. A tear slipped down his cheek, not of sorrow, but of peace. He did not wake fully yet. Instead, he let himself drift once more, floating in the warmth of that remembered life. And somewhere, beyond the walls of the castle, dawn began to rise, pale, tender, and new, ready to greet a man who would soon open his eyes not just as a king, but as himself. Sunlight filtered softly through the tall windows, brushing the walls with gentle gold. The king stirred beneath the linens, stretching limbs heavy with sleep. The memory of dreams clung to him, tender and fleeting, like morning mist across the fields. He rose slowly, feet brushing the cold stone floor. The castle seemed quieter now, as if it too had listened to the whispers of night. Torches had burned low, leaving a soft glow that mingled with the first rays of sun. The air smelled of dew and stone, clean and alive. By the window, he paused. The courtyard below glimmered with fresh light. Guards polished armor in silence, pages carried baskets of bread, and the distant river sparkled like a ribbon of silver. The king inhaled deeply, every breath full of calm, of quiet possibility. He touched the edge of the windowsill, feeling the smooth stone beneath his fingers. For a moment, he was not a ruler, nor a bearer of decisions, only a man alive, surrounded by a world waiting to be touched, seen, and remembered. In the kitchens, bread was being lifted from the ovens. Smoke curled lazily toward the rafters, carrying the warmth of morning. Somewhere a hound barked, and a crow cawed in the distance. The king listened, letting the sound settle into him like a gentle song. He dressed quietly, robes flowing without ceremony, crown resting nearby. Today, he would meet the demands of his role, but he carried with him the memory of night and dreams, a secret warmth beneath the weight of duty. Stepping into the corridor, he felt the stone beneath his boots differently. Solid, sure, yet welcoming. Sunlight followed him, brushing his robes, touching his face with the soft assurance that each day, each choice, could hold both responsibility and life. He paused at the balcony, looking out across the horizon. The fields and forests, the river and village, all glimmered with possibility. In that moment, he understood that power was not just a burden, but a chance to see, to feel, to act with the quiet wisdom of memory and the hope of morning. With a deep breath, he returned to the hall. Courtiers awaited, papers and decisions pressing like gentle tides. Yet he carried within him the calm of night and the dream of youth, a secret strength to guide his hands and steady his heart. And so the day began anew, soft and golden, filled with the echo of dreams and the gentle promise of life. The king moved forward, aware, alive, and ready, not only to rule, but to be. The sun dipped low, spilling amber and rose across the castle walls. Shadows lengthened, stretching lazily across the corridors. The king returned to his chambers, footsteps soft against stone, carrying with him the quiet exhaustion of a day fully lived. He set aside the heavy robes and crown, letting them rest upon their stand. The familiar weight was gone, replaced by the gentle comfort of simplicity. For a moment, he breathed freely, chest rising and falling with the calm rhythm of life beyond duty. The chamber was quiet now, lit only by a single candle flickering against the wall. Its light danced over familiar objects, the chest of memories, the old maps, the remnants of his youth. He lingered by them, tracing lines with his fingers, feeling the soft pull of time and memory. Outside, the castle had settled into sleep. The courtyard lay still, guards at their posts silent, and the distant river whispered faintly through the night. The king leaned back in his chair, allowing himself to feel the quiet, a companion more honest than any courtier or advisor. He closed his eyes, letting the day settle into the depths of his mind. The laughter of the courtyard, the songs of the night, the warmth of dreams and the whisper of memories, all mingled into a gentle hum of life, slow and patient. A soft breeze drifted through the open window, carrying the faint scent of pine and dew. He inhaled it deeply, letting it fill him with calm. The weight of power, of decisions made and still to come, rested lightly now, softened by the simple act of being alive. He rose and moved to the bed, pulling the blankets close. The castle walls seemed to breathe with him, ancient and protective, as if aware of his need for rest. He lay down, head heavy but heart lighter, the last candle flickering low. Outside, stars gleamed gently in the night sky. The moon cast a silver glow across the room, brushing the king with its quiet light. In that stillness, he felt whole, a ruler, a man, a witness to the simple beauty of one day fully lived. Sleep came slowly, wrapping him in warmth and shadow. The world softened, fading into dreams and whispers. The crown, the robes, the endless demands, all became distant. Only the quiet remained, patient, gentle, and enduring. And so the day ended, complete in its calm, full of life, memory, and hope. Tomorrow would come with duties and crowns once more, but tonight was simply the peace of being, of existing, of resting as a man who had walked through one day as a king. The morning sun broke gently over the horizon, spilling gold across the castle towers. The king stood upon the balcony, letting the warmth brush his face. Today, he would leave the walls behind, if only for a few hours, to walk among the lands he ruled and remember the world beyond stone and seal. The stables were quiet but alive. Horses stamped in the cool morning air, nostrils flaring, breaths misting in the dawn. A groom led forward a strong bay stallion, its mane flowing like shadowed silk. The king ran his hand along its neck, feeling the pulse of life beneath his fingers. No crown rested upon his head today. Only a simple cloak shielded him from the morning chill. He swung into the saddle, and the leather creaked softly, a gentle welcome. The gates opened before him, wide and heavy, letting him pass from stone into open sky. Beyond the castle walls, the valley stretched like a patchwork quilt. Fields of wheat swayed in the wind. Rivers gleamed like ribbons of silver, and the forest's edge beckoned with shadows and the scent of pine. He breathed deeply, letting the scents and sounds fill the emptiness left by walls and duty. He rode slowly along the dirt road, listening. The distant bleat of sheep, the murmur of a brook, and the rustle of leaves became a symphony, alive with life unmeasured by courtly time. For a moment, the king was not a ruler. He was a boy again, running barefoot through open fields, unburdened by crown or command. A small village appeared ahead. Smoke curled from chimneys, and the faint scent of fresh bread drifted through the air. Children played near a well, their laughter like silver bells. Women tended gardens, and men repaired fences. The king slowed his horse, letting the world unfold before him like a painting coming to life. He dismounted, greeting the villagers with a nod. They curtsied and bowed, yet he spoke softly, words gentle and unthreatening. "Good morning," he said simply. The baker smiled faintly and offered a warm loaf, which he accepted with quiet gratitude. The taste of freshly baked bread, sweet, warm, and real, reminded him of simpler times. A boy approached, shy, holding a small bundle of herbs. "For you, my lord," he said. The king took them, inhaling the faint scent of thyme and rosemary. He thanked the boy, noticing the bright curiosity in his eyes. Such moments, simple and fleeting, carried more weight than any decree, more warmth than any courtly smile. He walked among the villagers, listening to their stories of lost harvests, repaired wells, and festivals in the town square. Each tale was small, yet full of life, a heartbeat of the kingdom unseen from the stone of the castle. The king's heart swelled quietly, realizing how vast and tender his realm truly was. By midday, he mounted again, riding toward the forest path. Shadows stretched long across the trail, dappled with sunlight filtering through high branches. Birds flitted between the trees, their songs weaving through the air. The king felt the cool embrace of shade, the softness of moss beneath his boots, and the gentle rustle of leaves in the wind. A deer emerged into a clearing, pausing to look at him. Its eyes, wide and unafraid, held a silent grace. The king dismounted, watching it disappear into the trees. Moments like these reminded him that life continued in quiet ways, beyond court, beyond crown, untouched, wild, and free. The path wound along a stream, water tumbling over rocks, singing as it flowed. He knelt beside it, cupping the cold, clear water in his hands. The chill brushed against his skin, a whisper of reality, grounding him. Around him, the forest breathed, a living cathedral of peace and endurance. Time passed slowly, measured only by the tilt of the sun and the shadows stretching across the earth. He paused to rest on a moss-covered stone, letting his gaze wander over the rolling hills. The wind carried scents of wildflowers and earth, and he closed his eyes, listening to the soft, persistent music of the land. In the distance, a falcon soared, circling high above the trees. The king watched its effortless flight, feeling a strange kinship with the creature. Both were born to navigate vast spaces, yet bound by invisible chains, one of sky, the other of duty. Still, for a moment, he allowed himself the illusion of freedom. As the afternoon waned, he began the slow ride back toward the castle. The path glimmered in golden light, shadows stretching long behind the trees. His heart felt lighter, carrying the quiet joys of simple people, the hum of nature, and the serene solitude of the open land. Returning to the castle, he dismounted once more, patting the horse gently. "Thank you, Ashen," he murmured. The groom bowed, smiling faintly, sensing the subtle transformation in the man who rode back through gates, no longer a stranger, but a part of the land itself. Inside the stone walls, the castle welcomed him back with its familiar coolness. Yet he carried the forest, the village, the river, and the open sky within him. A day had passed beyond the crown, yet it had left an imprint stronger than any decree, a calm deeper than any hall of gold. The king stood for a moment in the courtyard, closing his eyes, breathing in the lingering sense of earth and stone. The day had offered him something rare, a taste of life beyond the throne, a reminder that he was not only ruler but also a man, alive, connected, and quietly free. The castle had settled into its usual rhythm after the king's journey. The corridors echoed softly with the shuffle of servants, the distant clang of a smith's hammer, and the muted footsteps of patrolling guards. The day had left the stone walls warmer, quieter, yet alive with expectation. In his study, candles flickered gently, casting long shadows across the wooden desk. Letters lay in neat piles, sealed in wax of different colors: red, green, and pale blue. Each carried a voice from afar, whispers of loyalty, requests, or subtle discontent. The king picked one at random, breaking the seal with deliberate care. The parchment smelled faintly of ink and parchment, earthy and warm. The words were soft yet sharp, hinting at unrest in a distant village, a disagreement among lords, a tension unnoticed by the common eye. He read slowly, savoring the cadence of each sentence, feeling the weight of their implications settle upon his chest. A page appeared silently in the doorway. Bowing low, he gestured for the boy to approach. "Bring the green wax letters," he said softly. The page obeyed, moving like a shadow, careful not to disturb the delicate balance of candlelight and silence. Each letter seemed to hum with quiet importance, waiting for his attention. He sat in the chair, fingers brushing the seals before opening them. One spoke of trade agreements, another of a dispute over land boundaries, and yet another carried news from a distant fortress, subtle hints of betrayal, carefully concealed. He exhaled slowly, allowing the words to settle, digesting the undercurrents hidden beneath formal language. The king placed a hand upon the smooth surface of the desk, feeling the wood's warmth. He considered each message, not with alarm, but with a calm patience. The whispers and secrets were a part of his life, a quiet stream flowing beneath the visible river of power. Understanding them required stillness, not haste. An advisor entered, bowing low, and approached the desk with a quiet rustle of robes. "My lord," he whispered, "there is word from the southern counties. Some lords seek audience concerning their lands." The king nodded slowly, eyes scanning the letter before him. "Let them come," he murmured, voice soft but steady, carrying the weight of command without raising it. Minutes passed in gentle silence. The candlelight flickered across the maps pinned to the walls, highlighting rivers, forests, and villages. He traced his fingers along the lines, feeling the contours of his kingdom beneath his touch. Every fold of parchment, every mark of ink, held both promise and caution, the quiet pulse of life beyond the castle. The advisor spoke again, offering suggestions in hushed tones. The king listened, letting the words pass like wind over a calm lake. He did not respond immediately. Instead, he allowed the silence to carry the weight of thought, letting each whisper of strategy settle deep within him before forming an answer. The letters continued to arrive, delivered by careful hands, each one a tiny ripple in the vast sea of governance. He read them slowly, weighing loyalty, intentions, and the subtle currents of influence. He felt the kingdom shift softly beneath him, not like an earthquake, but like the gentle sway of branches in the wind. Outside, the sun lowered, spilling golden light through the tall windows. The castle seemed to hold its breath, awaiting the king's quiet decisions. He paused, looking up from the parchment, and allowed himself a moment to simply observe the distant trees, the flowing river, the smoke rising from chimneys, all reminders that life continued beyond politics and power. A small knock sounded at the door. Another page entered, carrying a message written in delicate script. The king took it, noting the careful fold and the elegance of the writing. He opened it slowly, savoring the soft rhythm of words. A report of distant forests, a merchant's request, a lord's quiet plea. Each letter was a story, a fragment of life shaped by his decisions. He leaned back in his chair, eyes closing briefly. The weight of responsibility rested on him gently, like a blanket rather than a chain. Secrets and whispers surrounded him, yet they no longer pressed harshly upon his shoulders. Instead, they became a landscape, one that required careful observation, patience, and calm discernment. The room darkened slowly as evening advanced. Candles burned lower, shadows stretching across the walls. The king's hand rested lightly upon the letters, a soft connection between his presence and the pulse of the kingdom. He felt the delicate balance of power, loyalty, and truth, sensing that understanding came not through force, but through quiet attentiveness. He rose from the chair, stretching slowly, and walked to the window. The courtyard below glimmered in twilight, the soft glow of torches marking the paths of servants and guards. The kingdom was alive, moving in subtle rhythms, while he remained at its heart, quietly guiding, watching, and listening. The evening deepened, and the study grew darker. He arranged the letters neatly, sealing the messages he had responded to. Each document carried a sense of completion, a gentle acknowledgement of duty fulfilled. He allowed himself to linger a moment longer, absorbing the serene energy that came from thoughtful action and silent observation. Finally, he stepped away from the desk, moving toward the door. Outside, the castle embraced the calm of approaching night. He felt the rhythm of the kingdom in his chest, a quiet harmony, a whispering reminder that even amidst secrets and subtle intrigue, life continued, soft, patient, and enduring. The sun began its slow descent, painting the castle walls in hues of amber and rose. The day's warmth lingered in the stones, soft and steady. The king stepped onto the balcony, taking a deep breath, letting the evening wind brush his face with a gentle promise of quiet reflection. The courtyard below shimmered in golden light. Guards moved with measured calm, pages carried baskets of fruit, and the distant river reflected the sky like a silver ribbon. Birds returned to their nests, singing faintly as shadows lengthened. He watched, sensing the rhythm of life continuing unhurried, serene. He descended the spiral staircase into the gardens, where roses, thyme, and lavender bloomed quietly. The air smelled of earth and blossom, mingling with the soft hum of bees returning to hives. Each step on the cobblestones felt grounding, connecting him to the land he ruled, yet allowed him to step outside the weight of the crown. A fountain murmured softly nearby, water catching the fading light. He paused beside it, watching the ripples spread in delicate circles. The sound was calming, almost hypnotic, carrying a sense of time moving gently, without hurry or expectation. He let his thoughts drift, untangled from the duties and whispers of the day. A gentle breeze stirred the branches overhead. Leaves rustled softly, brushing against one another, creating a melody of subtle motion. He walked slowly, taking in every detail, the curve of a stone path, the shimmer of a flower petal, the distant glow of torchlight in the castle windows. The world was alive, tender, and patient. He reached a quiet bench beneath an oak whose limbs stretched wide across the evening sky. Sitting, he rested his hands on his knees, feeling the smoothness of carved wood beneath his fingers. His mind wandered through the events of the day. Letters read, villagers greeted, the forest visited, each memory a gentle echo in the stillness. He recalled the faces of those he met that morning, their smiles and cautious greetings. Their lives seemed small against the weight of his crown, yet each carried meaning, a fragile thread woven into the larger tapestry of the kingdom. The king let gratitude fill him quietly, a warmth that outshone the fading sun. From the far corner of the garden, a nightingale began its song. Its melody was soft, carrying through the air like a whisper. The king closed his eyes briefly, letting the notes reach deep, reminding him that beauty often exists in the smallest moments, unnoticed by most yet powerful beyond measure. Shadows deepened as twilight gave way to dusk. Lanterns flickered on along the garden paths, casting golden pools of light that danced among the leaves. The king rose, walking slowly toward the castle doors, each step measured, deliberate, mindful of the quiet majesty of the evening. He paused at the doorway, looking back over the gardens. The fountain, the roses, the ancient oak, all seemed to glow in the last light. He felt the gentle passage of time, the calm acceptance of endings, and the quiet promise of night to follow. The world was patient, enduring, and unhurried. Inside, the castle welcomed him with its familiar cool stone and muted warmth. The day's duties were behind him, and the night awaited, not in urgency, but in gentle preparation for rest. He moved through the halls, acknowledging the soft murmurs of servants and the distant shuffle of guards, all in rhythm with the settling evening. He returned to his private chamber, the familiar scent of cedar and parchment greeting him. Candles flickered low, their flames swaying softly. He removed his cloak and set aside his crown, letting the weight of authority fall gently to the stand. The king was alone now, yet accompanied by the echoes of his own reflections. Sitting by the window, he watched the first stars appear in the deepening sky. The castle, gardens, and distant fields lay quiet beneath the silver moon. He let his eyes soften, his thoughts settle, and his breath slow. The day had been long, yet it ended in serenity, in gentle comprehension of life lived fully. He stretched out upon the bed, pulling the linens close. Outside, the night carried the soft hum of nature, leaves rustling, distant water murmuring, the occasional call of an owl. The king closed his eyes, allowing the quiet to hold him, each breath syncing with the rhythm of the world beyond walls and duty. Sleep came as a gentle tide, washing over him with calm and warmth. The crown, the letters, the duties, all became distant. Only the peace of dusk remained, patient and enduring. The king drifted, content, whole, ready to meet another day with the knowledge of both power and simple human grace. The gardens outside whispered softly to the night, the fountains hummed, and the castle exhaled. In the quiet, the king rested, a man fully alive, carrying the rhythm of life, the song of the world, and the gentle reflection of one day beautifully lived.